skip and a jump. On today's episode, I have the wonderful Charlotte from Raybrook Vet Physiotherapy. I'm lucky enough to have Charlotte as part of the Yorkshire Pooches Therapies team. I have a lot of dogs that come to see me. They may have behavioural issues, they may have an aversion to intentional touch, or just big feelings. I call it big feelings, whatever they may be. So I'm able to build a rapport with these dogs in clinic, and then I'm able to palpate feedback to Charlotte, who can then come up with a physio exercise program for them. I think as therapists, it's really important to tap into other therapists' branches of knowledge, and exercise prescription is not something that I have knowledge of, and it's something that I trust Charlotte with wholeheartedly. So we're just going to jump straight into it. Me and Charlotte do like to waffle at length, so we thought it would be nice for you lot to have a listen in to the things that we discuss. Okay, so every therapist that I speak to has a favourite area or injury that they like to work with, which always sounds very strange to people who aren't in this industry. Tell me, first of all, what's your favourite area to work on?
Favourite area, bit of a weird one. I like the carpus.
Oh, she's a carpus girly.
Girly. I do obviously like the elbow as well. The elbow's up there.
Yeah, you like your forelimbs, don't you?
I feel like they're a bit different. Like a lot of what I see tends to be stifle here.
Yeah.
And I just like something a bit different.
Yeah. See, for me, I would say that elbows are like my weakest point. So it's just, I don't know, I just never feel 100% confident working with an elbow. Like I can and I do work with elbows, but as a preference, I am most happiest with the stifle joint. I love the stifle joint. I love talking about its conformation. I just love working with it, and I love feeling stability or instability in that. I'd say my favorite kind of condition to work with is luxating patella. 100%. That's my favorite one. And is that because I see it so much? Maybe, I don't know, but I'd say hips is probably what I work with the most. What would you say you work with the most?
Stifles I work with the most, to be honest. But I think with the elbow as well, it is one of those joints where you've got the three different points of contact.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things that can go wrong, but also we've got to remember that dogs will put more weight through their forelimbs than their hind limbs. And I think sometimes the forelimbs are overlooked a little bit, which is another reason why I really like it, because I'm 100% a holistic girly. Like we've got to look at the whole picture.
I think as well, I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. The elbows don't get the attention that they need or deserve, and I think that's very multifactorial. So I think one of the reasons is that it's harder to spot forelimb lameness.
Yeah.
So Daryl Millis, he's one of his lectures, can't remember which one it was. He said that for us to spot forelimb lameness with the naked eye, the limb has to be around, I think it was like 15 to 20% limb. Before we see it.
Before
we can see it with our eyes. So I think that's one reason why we deal with a lot of hips and a lot of knees, because elbows just aren't being looked at as often as they should do, or as in depth. I think it's harder for pet parents to ignore a hind limb lameness as opposed to forelimb lameness. To have a forelimb lameness, it has to be, I mean, like completely not weight bearing on a forelimb. We are, it's death on 5, isn't it, really, when that happens? So Lily came into the kitchen at work, and she was not weight bearing on her forelimb, and I was like, oh my god, what has happened, Lily? Like that. And I go to get her, and she must have been asleep on the bed, and her dew claw had gone on the little hook of her collar. And I was like, oh my god. And then I just undid her collar, and she's like, oh thanks. But she'd hopped down the hallway all the way down the building and I was like, oh my god. But yeah, I think it's harder for pet parents to see a lameness in the fore. I think it's a harder one for us to see, like just because of the way that a dog weight bears. Obviously, they carry 6% in the fore and 40% in the hind. I think because I find it a really complicated joint, and I don't like, what's the word? It's not I don't like rehabbing them. So like if anything kind of post-operatively comes to me, it's I don't feel like I'm in a position to work like early doors post-operatively. I think that should be physio. If you can have me as well as an add-on, that's an absolute luxury, then yes, I can help. But you really need a physio on board, in my opinion, because it is a complicated joint and you've got to get it moving right.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to word far better.
Well, it is technically, it is a hinge joint at the end of the day. And you oh, what's so complicated about a hinge joint? But there are so many factors involved because you've got those different points of contact. You've obviously got the humerus, you've got the ulna, and you've got the radius. So you've got 3 bones involved. And obviously, if you think about just as the stifle joint, you've only got those 2, haven't you? So there is a
end with and I think you can feel a lot in the stifle.
Well,
it's quite an expressive. I find it an expressive joint, so it talks to you a lot more than what the elbow does. I always find it a little bit more tricky to palpate the elbow.
See, I think I've been quite lucky in the sense that that's an area that keepers struggled with, and because obviously he's my dog, I've watched him every single day, so I've got a good idea of the gait, and also whenever he's consented for me to, I've palpated it. So I've had that hands-on experience, and I think that's really helped my understanding of grasping what we should be looking for. Yeah,
because like I find that so when I'm palpating or just working around the stifle, you can. It depended on, I'm like mimicking now, like what I do when I'm having a feel, and I'm feeling for those areas of heat. I'm feeling for the change in landscape, and I find it very difficult to kind of put that into words. What I'm feeling, I just know when I go, oh yeah, that doesn't feel too good.
Yeah, and I think that comes with experience as well. Like you've got to know what's right and what's normal to know what's not normal.
Yeah.
And I think the more hands-on you have of a particular joint, the more well-rounded you're going to become in knowing, that's not right.
I think when I first started, crikey, when I first qualified, I was terrified. I thought I did a bit imposter syndrome big time. I was like, I cannot be allowed to work on people's dogs, and actually I can. I'd qualified and I was insured and I was part of my governing body, like I ticked all the boxes. But I think because of that, it is about experience, it's about building up that experience. So I remember when I first started training and my tutor was like, right, okay, you're looking for myofascial adhesions or knots. I don't like the word knot in a muscle.
No, I don't tend to use the word knot.
Yeah, I just go like, I'll say like, oh, there's a bit of a restriction or something's a little bit sore, because I think when people say like, oh, we've got a knot here, and I think, well, knots are quite, they can be quite easy to untie, and the muscle doesn't behave like that.
I don't, and especially when it's chronic as well, which it usually is. It takes time. It does take time.
And you have to, I always say, instead of a knot, you've got to imagine, say, a muscle that's in distress. Imagine it like you've got to peel back layers of an onion. So even if right at the deep tissue, we've got really kind of pissed off area. It's very angry. It's very acidic. It's got heat in it. If I just go in and kind of poke it, all that's going to do is just make things more
irritate it more. And I think that's something as well that we need to talk about. It is painful for dogs. It is a painful thing, and we obviously, as therapists, we work as consent-based only.
Yes,
and that's why it can mean it can take even longer. Because we are only doing it when they're consenting to it. Absolutely. So if it is a chronic something chronic in a muscle and it's consent-based only, we're only going to be working on that muscle when the dog's allowing it.
100%. And I think that I find sometimes in our industry that maybe dogs are pushed further than what I would feel comfortable doing in a therapeutic session. Like even like I'll say to customers, so say I've got the dog sat in front of me and I'm checking, seeing what the fascia's doing on the back, and I go, oh, okay. I can really feel, it feels like grit underneath my fingers, gritty feeling.
Yeah.
So I'll be moving and I go, oh, right, okay. So I can feel where the problem is on the end of my fingers, but I know that it's potentially not the right thing to do in that moment.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll use like a little bit of Fatizo, do a little bit of light effleurage. So I'll say to the pet parent, listen, I know exactly where it is, and it's incredibly tempting to go, right, deep breath,
work on
it.
I'm not.
But again, you're removing agency, you're removing consent from that animal.
Yeah. And I think it's great that we're able to incorporate these electrotherapies into our appointments. Obviously, I know you use Fatizo, and it's really great to start working on the muscle without actually hands-on.
Yeah. I use Fatizo a lot for bathing an area. So sometimes the dog, it just isn't ready for that full contact with the Fatizo, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So we bathe. Instead, I like to bathe like the bottom of the feet, because a lot of dogs are touch sensitive or have an aversion to intentional touch around their paws. So I just bathe with the Fatizo. Or if I work on something, the dog goes, "Ooh," and I go, "Oh God, I'm so sorry. Let me just." I'll just tease you in that area a little bit, and then we'll try again. And they'll go, right, okay, because all it's doing is it's helping facilitate the body's natural healing mechanisms. It's just supporting that and bringing blood flow to the area. We bring blood flow, we bring heat. What happens is the muscle gets more receptive to palpation.
Yeah,
it's about working in conjunction. So with it, because you use it, is it a laser that you use? You use a different piece of equipment.
So it isn't technically a laser, but it uses super. Oh, now you ask me. It's like it's.
I find lasers very complicated.
It is complicated. So it can't be classed as a laser because of what it uses, but it works in basically the same way.
Right. Okay.
So. Yeah, that's what I use, but I also use PEMFT. So that's pulsed electric magnetic field therapy.
Yep.
So I use that as well. So I'll use them both usually in a session, but usually for different things.
Okay.
So
do that then.
Yeah. So what I'll usually start with is I'll usually use the pulse mag, so the PEMFT. I usually use that on an area that might be painful, and then I'll do some effleurage, and then once that has happened, I'll then go in with the laser, and do that, and then I'll do some more deeper soft tissue work. So I always use them sort of in that sort of order, but I mean the PMF can be used for other things as well. So it has got some great research in fractures. Fracture healing. So yeah, they are used in different ways. So for the laser, because it doesn't penetrate tissues as deeply as the pulse mag does.
Right. Okay.
So for deeper tissues, say like the hip joint, if there's some like OA in the hip joint, I'll use the pulse mag. And then if there's some things that are more superficial, so for example the carpus, it's not really got much on it, I can use the laser for that.
Nice. And is it like it's like a box where you put in your frequency on it, and then is it like a diode?
So it's the same. I use the same box for both of them, but I will set them at different frequencies.
Nice.
So there's several different settings that I can use for both the pulse mag and the laser. So depending on what I want to target, I can set the frequencies to what I want.
Gosh, that's so interesting. I didn't even think you could have them kind of coming off the same power block.
Yeah.
But as well, like what's kind of like the maintenance on something like that? Is that like, do you have to have the bulbs replaced in your laser, or
so you do have to do maintenance on them. I've not got to that point yet because I bought them brand new. And I haven't been using them for a year.
5 years.
But you do need to have maintenance on them, for sure.
Is that to keep it at its like most effective output? You have to have maintenance done on them, or
Yeah, and also just general wear and tear. So
Yeah.
you've got to make sure that everything's working as it should, because it's usually with these things, one thing goes off and then, oh, you can't use it. So yeah, one thing goes wrong and then it's all gone to pot. But yeah, you've got to keep on top of the maintenance, just like with anything else as well that you would keep on top of maintenance with.
Yeah. Because with Fatizo, they don't have to have, say, regular maintenance as such. The only thing I would say with Fatizo is that you have to look after the battery. So you can't leave it plugged in overnight because it'll damage the battery life. There's, as they age, so one of mine, it'll be coming up to 5 years and it's my most favourite one. So I don't want to send it off for a new battery in case they tell me that... I just really love it.
Yeah.
I'm very sentimental about it, so I don't want to send it anywhere. It stays at home, so that's the one that I tend to use at home. But I've got 3 Fatizos that I use in clinic because I use them every single session. I've got my silent one as well, which is amazing for my nervous dogs. To be honest, going forward, because I will most likely get more in the future. I would just opt for the silent ones kind of moving forward.
I mean, I'm quite lucky that my equipment is all silent, so there's no noise with it. But I think Fatizos are a great one for pet parents to have.
Yes, absolutely, all pre-programmed. And I always say, like, with the modalities that I use in clinic, I'm very, like the Fatizo is LED and near infrared. Yeah, like, that's what it is. It's not a laser, because if you want laser, or I call them like the big boy machines, you need to go to a physio, because it's a different modality. Because with laser, you can cause damage.
Yeah, you can cause damage, especially obviously around the eyes, you've got to be super duper careful. I know obviously with class 3 and class 4 lasers, both you and the animal, they need to wear goggles.
Yeah.
So
is there any risk with your pulse mag, Matt?
So the only real contraindications of that are if there's active bleeding. Then you're not going to be using it. That's a contraindication. Obviously,
would active bleeding include a bitch in season? I suppose you won't be working with a bitch that's in season, would you?
No, we tend to, if a bitch is in season, we tend to be like, no, that's fine. We'll leave her to it. We'll leave her to it. Don't worry.
No, like, we're all proud to the women in here, but bitches in season, please stay home, because I've got too many entire males that will completely disrupt their session if they smell that there's a honey in the clinic. Oh,
so God. Active bleeding, pregnancy, we tend to stay away. There is a thing about growth plates as well, so we have to be careful around those. And
what's the thing about growth plates? What is it that they heal too quickly? Well, not heal. They kind of
it's complicated. I think the research is conflicting, but because there is that conflicting research, we just say,
so you can use it elsewhere, but you can't use it over a growth plate.
We tend to stay away from growth plates just because of the conflicting research.
And as well, like with pregnancy, it's very difficult, because some of the things might actually be good for pregnancy or support the pregnant mother, but who's going to put their animal at risk to test that hypothesis out? So it's the same with Fatizo. I'd say that the contraindications with Fatizo, there is so if a dog has cancer, so because we're using photobiomodulation to heal on a cellular level, if a dog is, say, going through chemotherapy, or there is some kind of growth somewhere, we don't want to be supporting those cancerous tumours by powering them up again. So, but I have used Fatizo with dogs that have been going through a chemotherapy treatment or previous cancer kind of candidates. I just don't use it where there is
on that area. That's the same. That's the same with the pulse mag as well. With cancer, you just don't use it near the area.
Yeah, because the body still needs supporting. I think I can't remember. I was talking to it could have been you on a voice note maybe that I was talking to about cancer and massage, but there's even contraindications for massage.
Yeah.
So if a dog is going through chemotherapy, there is a certain time frame after they've had their chemotherapy that they are actually, radioactive, and you can't be touching them excessively. You can't have, like, obviously I don't have customers' dogs in the bed with me, but like one of the guidances is that they can't have their dog in the bed with them because of the drugs that's in their system. From a massage perspective, we don't want to be massaging cancerous tumors. We don't want to be breaking anything off and it go floating around the body. We don't want to do that, but also we don't want to be interacting with the lymphatic system. The drugs that have been put in the body need to stay in the body. They're there for a reason. So with massage, it's all about draining toxins and
flushing it out.
Pushing it out, when actually we just want everything to stay exactly where it is. So I have worked with dogs that have been going through active chemotherapy treatment. 4-limb amputee, and she was amputated I think at 10 years old, and we've got another 2.5 years with her. And a good 2.5 years as well. Good 2.5 years. But yeah, it was just, for me, it's just like common sense. Don't rub cancer.
No. I think as well, though, with contraindications, it is so important to have that history part of my assessments.
Yes.
Like the history taking part, because, I mean, for me as a therapist, there might be something in that dog's history that I think is really important, but the owner just brushes over it. And I've got to try and tease those little things out of the owner, the pet parent, and get a good understanding of how I'm working with that dog, because it is so important that we remain safe. So you've got to work within your scope of practice. You've got to know the tools that you're using, and that all comes with obviously being qualified. So
and keeping up to date with the relevant research and having suitable qualification. So one of my things that I do in clinic, and it must drive my customers absolutely potty, but I don't care. So I'll be working on a dog and I go, oh, we've got a lumpy bumpy here. Do we know about this one? And they go, yes. It's probably the same lumpy bumpy that I come across every single time. But because I look after like 40 dogs, like floating around, it's very difficult to remember sometimes, if was that lumpy bumpy there before? So I will, if there's a scab on your dog, I'll find it.
Yes.
So pass me my phone, torchlight, let's have a look. Let's have a look. Yeah, okay, we're all right. Just keep an eye on that scabby. If I find any lumpy bumpies, so I had a customer. I've been looking after this dog for, it will be about 5 years. He's been coming to me once every 8 weeks or something like that. And I was doing this session. I was going down that like front of his shoulder, and I went, "What the hell is that?" And then I went, "Right, just have it." And I went, "No, that's new. That is 100% new." So this particular dog, mum and dad drop him off. They go for a coffee, and he just stays with me. He's absolutely, he just melts like butter in these sessions. Oh my god, he's so gorgeous. I love him. And I said to his mum and dad, I said, right, come on into clinic. I said, I'm going to show you something. I said, I don't want you to freak out or pass out or anything. I said, I found a lump. I said, I'm not happy about this. So I showed it, I like palpated it for him. I said, and it was in a right funny place. So if you pressed on it, it kind of like disappear into the soft
yeah.
Little slippery bugger, right? So I said, right, this is where it is, and this is how you find it. I said, I want you to go to the vets. I said, show them where it is. I said, don't be messing with it all the time. I said, because if it's, say for example, if it's a fatty lump and we keep messing with it, it will just grow. Now this lump got bigger and bigger and bigger, but where it was, I was
restricting the movement type thing.
It was getting into that sort of territory that it was going to be restricting the movement, because it was an area with a lot of movement. It just got bigger, so they had it removed. Thank God it was just a fatty lump.
And I think fatty lumps are one of those things that, like, we're most likely going to be the first people to find them if it's in a dodgy place. Like, I remember palpating Kiba's iliopsoas. Obviously, it's right up in the groin, and I found like a little lump, And I remember going to the vet, so I was like, I'm going to be so embarrassed because I can be like, what is this woman doing? Like palpating a dog's groin. Like, what is she doing? It was in such a strange place. And I was like, don't worry, like, I'm a therapist. I was just having a palpate of his muscles. Like, no, it's fine. Because it was right up in there, up in his groin. But I was just trying to palpate the iliopsoas. So.
And has it just stayed stationary? That lump?
Yeah, so it's not changed at all. It's not changed at all.
I just always say, just keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on it. If it starts to quickly change, and it changes in texture, or so it goes from like slippy and bouncy to rock hard, or it goes rock hard to slippy and bouncy, like 9 times out of 10, it probably is just a fatty lump. However, we can't take that risk. Is it safe to keep biopsying every single lump? No, it's not, especially if they're older. Or, they get to an age where actually, we don't want to go looking. So there's that to consider as well. I think the weirdest place that I found one was, it was on the, I'm really shit with names, intercostal muscles in between your ribs.
Oh, really? You found one there?
I was like, what the hell is, it was a fatty lump. Tiny, it was like the size of like a kidney bean. I'd say that's the weirdest place that I've found one. That's the weirdest place that I found a lumpy gumpy. But I find them all over. Another one that I like to check as well is the lymph nodes that we
around there.
Have a little feel, make sure everything's even, make sure everything's for me it's about them feeling even, and it's really weird. You just kind of start getting a sense for what is normal. The more hands-on you are with dogs, you start, and that's going to look different for every single dog. But you start to go, and it's when it's like muscle memory in your hands, isn't it?
Yeah, I do say our hands are our greatest tool. Yeah.
100%. My hands can tell me more than my eyes sometimes. They're so sensitive. So what was I going to say then about hand sensitivity? There was it was a case, this was a couple of years ago, 12-year-old dog, and I was feeling over down the back of his thigh, and I went, yeah, okay, we've got a lymph node that's quite raised here. I need you to go to the vets and have a look at that. Went to the vets and they had a feel, and they went, he had a cyst like right on his point of hip, right on his rump. And they said, we think it's linked to this cyst. And I was like, came back again, and I think he'd gone on antibiotics or something like that. I went, no, I said, I'm really not happy. I said, I'm really, really not happy. Really not happy with this.
And I think sometimes we do have to dig deep as well when we try and second guess ourselves, because you've got to go with gut instinct as well.
Absolutely.
Like, you've got to say, do you know what? Actually, no, there is something wrong here. And it's much better to go into that and find out that there's not actually anything wrong than ignore it, and there could be something wrong.
So I sent him back to the vets. I mean, luckily, like, my pet parents know that I don't refer back to the vet lightly. I don't refer back. I do refer back to the vet, but I'm taking this one out when I'm saying it. So pet parent got it, and she went, did an ultrasound, and he was full of cancer in his so no amount of antibiotics were going to change what that lymph node was doing, and that was simply from palpating the back.
But we have the luxury in our appointments to take that time to do that. And I think that's one of our biggest assets as therapists. We have the time
to problem solve with pet parents, to be that like shoulder to lean on, to be that sounding board. And it's when we're, especially with my clinic, it's a pain management clinic, it's really emotive. Talking about your dog in pain is incredibly emotive. I can be super objective with pet parents dogs. It doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, that it's not an uncomfortable conversation sometimes, but I have to be objective in that scenario, because we've got a duty of care to the welfare of the animal.
And I think, I'm pretty sure when I either qualified or when I signed up to the NAVP or something, I had to sign something. I know vets have to sign something, don't they? But I had to do that, and we have got that duty of care.
Did you have to sign something? Like
I'm pretty sure I did.
Do something,
Pretty sure I did. Either when I qualified from my course or as part of the NAVP. I can't quite remember because my brain's moved.
You had to sign something to say.
Yeah, but we do have that.
Absolutely. I always, you know, I have these are conversations that I think sometimes when we did training and when we first qualified, I don't think we're suitably prepared sometimes to deal with quality of life conversations. So some people just don't say anything, whereas for me it's a very, very important part of my job.
I totally agree with you on that part, and I think as part of my course I don't think that was touched on enough. Because I often think that's passed on to the vet, which obviously vets can do a great job of speaking to pet parents about that, but we tend to have a better relationship with our pet parents just purely because of the amount of time that we can spend with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I have conversations, you know, I'm not telling them to do anything, but it's, you know, if we're talking about quality of life, I go, right, okay, so this is what we need to look for, and this is, you know, this is what can happen, and these are your options, and so you can start preparing them for those conversations. And I think if pet parents have that little bit of information beforehand, it will just inadvertently take a bit, and I mean a bit of pressure off that vet. You know, having to have that conversation in a 10-minute appointment.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think we've got to remember as therapists, our duty of care is also towards the pet parent and their emotional health. Because having a pet, I mean, you know, I know, it is such an emotional roller coaster. And to have somebody to have that objective point of view, I think is so important.
And just a different voice in the conversation. A different voice in the conversation. So I think I don't know. I mean, look at us sat on our high horse telling everyone how they should be running things. But I think that there's not enough support for therapists on how to navigate situations like that. I think if I was to give a single piece of information, like just be human. Just be real, you know, don't, for me, like, you know, everyone's branding is going to be different from a business perspective, but for Yorkshire Speech Therapy, it's very personal. It's very personal service. It's, so part of mine is going, do you know what? This is going to be really tough. I've been through it, and this is what, and use your own, don't be afraid to talk about your own experience. You know?
I think it's so important that we remember that. Sorry, my thoughts just gone from my head now, but I will remember it.
To remember that you know, they're just human as well.
They're just human as well. And that's it, I remember now, because I've struggled with this a lot because I'm a people pleaser and I don't want to give someone bad news. But I think we have a responsibility to not sugarcoat things. Obviously, there's a nice way of telling people things. Like, of course, you're always going to be nice to people, but I don't think we should sugarcoat things in terms of if there is something wrong, don't say anything. I think if there's a problem, it needs to be said.
I think as well that relates quite acutely to dogs being over-conditioned or overweight.
100%.
But the way that I say it is that they're carrying extra timber. Carrying a bit of extra timber. I don't like the word fat. I think the word fat is very emotive. And you know, you don't want to, we're not out here to upset people. No. But like you said, we have a duty of care to ensure the absolute best for that animal that's under our care, but to help guide pet parents on on how to utilize our knowledge to get more for the money. So the way that I kind of explain it is that, listen, the best and most effective supplement for joint health is having a lean dog.
Yeah, like if anybody asks if I have a pet parent and their dog is overweight and they ask me about a joint supplement, I tell them there's not one I can recommend to you until your dog loses some weight.
Yeah,
simple as that.
And it really is as clear cut as that. Like, if you look at,
I mean, I don't dance around. Like, I won't ever say to a pet parent, your dog's fat. I will say,
never.
Look, your dog's overweight. These are the health implications that may possibly have, and then guide them into what they can do. So instead of just saying this is the problem, offer them a solution.
Yeah. I think so. For me, like when we're say having these conversations about the dog being overconditioned or carrying some extra timber, I go, right, okay, let's run through a normal day. What does a normal day look like for them? Right, well, they have the breakfast. Okay, right. So what diet are we on? Right, okay. And I think that's where our knowledge in canine nutrition can kind of really come into play. So big advocates of raw feeding. So if someone is feeding duck, a lot of duck, yes, it's high in bone content, but it's incredibly high in fat as well. Because I made the same mistakes when I was, when I first started raw feeding. I used to feed a lot of duck because I liked it because it had high bone content and the poos were really firm.
Yeah.
And then Lily got really fat. And I was like, oh my God, Lily, what's going on? And it was one of my customers, actually. Oh my goodness. This was Steph, Ronnie and Roxy's mum, who turned around to me and she went, you do know that duck's really high in fat, don't you? And I was like, what? And I looked and I was like, what? And it could just be something as simple as that.
Yeah.
That can massively change. We were talking about rabbit ears earlier and how they're really high in fat.
Yeah.
So change it, if someone's doing a lot of force-free training, using lots of treats, could we use cooked chicken breast and cucumber?
Yeah. I think it's a case of, I mean, I'm an advocate, I would say more fresh feeding.
Yes.
Obviously I feed Kiba raw, but I tend to terminology it as it fresh feeding now, because if somebody feeds cooked, I'm like, woohoo, and I think so. I'm pretty sure one of your dogs is better uncooked, perhaps.
Oh yeah,
is that the case?
Yeah. Lily's uncooked. She just has historical like anal gland issues. She was raw fed for years, and then we started having these issues, and she's just better suited to cooked. That's the top and bottom of it. Rodney is fed at the moment a ludicrous amount of raw food because I just cannot keep weight on him in winter, and Peggy's on raw, but she can't have any vegetables because it makes it itchy. So three dogs, three completely different diets.
And I think that's one thing that as pet parents everyone can start doing, no matter what food they feed, is to read the labels.
Yeah, because it could be something as simple as that. I had one customer who was, they were feeding, when you work it out for raw fed dogs, it goes on a percentage basis. And I go, right, okay, so you're doing this and you're measuring it out. Measuring it out. Right, okay. So then I went, right, okay, so what brands are you feeding? They were just feeding one brand. I said, right, okay, let's have a look on the website. And we looked at the fat content.
Yeah, a good brand of food should list the fat content.
Yes.
If that brand of food is not listing the fat content, then you might want to think twice about feeding it.
Red flag. So when we looked at this particular brand of food, I was like, I love this brand so much, but good God, look at the fat content on these. So then I said, it doesn't mean that we completely discredit that brand, but what we need to do is look at other brands of raw dog food. I mean, we're incredibly fortunate in the UK that we have, I wouldn't even like to guess, definitely over 40 different raw dog food brands, if not more. We've got the option to kind of look at different brands, because every different brand will have a different sourcing of meat and different formulations and yada yada yada. So it helps spread out that fat content if needs be.
For sure. And I think it's something that I've really had to be on the ball with with my own dog Kiva, because he struggles with fat content, and I've really had to find what works for him. And it just means that I have to look at the label or look at the website, and it only takes 2 seconds to do that, but that could really impact on him. So just taking those couple of minutes to either read the ingredients on the packet or have a look on their website, and as I said, if they don't have that, then that's a red flag.
Red flag. And treats as well for your physio, and like pate, things like that, like super duper high in calories, some of them ones. So it's just be mindful. But again, that's how we can, as therapists, how we can help pet parents navigate, you know, getting weight off their dogs in a safe way. It doesn't mean that they have to, you know, start running on treadmills or, you know, running all the time to get the excess weight off. Just double check what's going on in the diet and just see if there's anything we can be tweaking to make it as effective as possible.
Because I think a lot of people, they worry about how much they're feeding, and that can obviously impact, but we also need to look at what's being fed.
Absolutely, 100%. Well, Charlotte, I think this has been another very insightful conversation. I'm going to stop us there because we will literally keep talking for another 3 hours. I hope you enjoyed this podcast as much as I did. Charlotte is fantastic at what she does, and it's always great to have that different perspective on some of those complex cases, or even just a soundboard and stuff, just to check that my knowledge is up to date as well. If you've liked this podcast, make sure to like, share and subscribe, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care for now.